In a time long past, etched into the very memory of the earth, humans lived in small, isolated groups. This is the story of two such tribes, the last of their kind, and how their world was forever changed. Imagine a lush green valley carved by a sparkling river. On one side, nestled in the rocky hillsides, were the caves of the hunters. On the other, where the land flattened into fertile plains, lived the farmers. For generations, the river was their meeting point, their marketplace, their bond. The hunters, skilled and swift, would bring down wild game from the high mountains. Their lives were a rhythm of pursuit, of trekking and capturing the beasts that roamed the land. They would carry their prized meat down to the riverbank, their faces painted with the pride of a successful hunt. Sir, they would meet the farmers. The farmers were people of the earth. They understood the cycles of the sun and the moon, the language of the soil. They tilled the land, planted seeds, and they nurtured their crops until the grains were golden and heavy. They would bring baskets overflowing with wheat, barley, and vegetables to the river. The exchange was a sacred ritual. Meat for grain, protein for carbohydrates. It was a perfect balance, a symbiotic relationship that ensured both tribes thrived. The hunters' children grew strong on the farmers' bread, and the farmers' families feasted on the hunters' venison. They weren't one people, but they were not enemies. They were neighbors, bound by the life-giving river and a mutual, unspoken respect. Life was simple, predictable, and peaceful. But the earth is a fickle master. One year, the rains simply stopped coming. The sky, once a generous giver of life, turned into a merciless, brassy dome. The sun beat down, day after day, week after week. The vibrant green valley slowly bleached into a desolate expanse of pale yellow and dusty brown. The river, once their source of life and connection, began to shrink. It retreated from its banks, leaving behind cracked, thirsty mud. The mighty flow became a sluggish trickle, and then, just a series of stagnant, murky pools. The drought was a silent, creeping predator, and its prey was everything. For the farmers, it was a catastrophe. Their carefully tended fields turned to dust. The soil, once soft and dark, became as hard as rock. The tender green shoots of their crops withered and died, their hopes turning to ash. The granaries, once full, began to empty at an alarming rate. The hollow sound of an empty storage pot became a daily torment. For the hunters, the disaster was just as profound. The animals they hunted, desperate for water, migrated away from the valley, seeking greener pastures that no more longer existed. The forest grew silent. The familiar tracks and the trails vanished. The hunters would return to their caves day after day, their hands empty, their spirits crushed. The gnawing emptiness in their stomachs was matched only by the growing fear in their hearts. Hunger is a powerful and destructive force. It erodes reason, dissolves trust, and plants seeds of suspicion. The two tribes, once peaceful neighbors, began to look at each other with new, wary eyes. The shared space by the dying river was no more longer a place of trade, but of tension. The hunters, their bodies lean and their tempers short from starvation, looked across at the farmers' settlement. They saw the farmers digging wells, desperately trying to coax the last drops of moisture from the deep earth. In their desperation, they saw not a struggle for survival, but hoarding. "They are keeping the water for themselves," one hunter whispered, the words spreading like wildfire through their hungry camp. "They are letting us starve while they water their dead fields." The farmers, in turn, looked up at the hunters' caves. They remembered seeing hunting parties trampling through their fields in the past, their heavy feet sometimes damaging young crops. In their grief and anger, these small annoyances swelled into monstrous grievances. "The hunters have always been careless," a farmer muttered, his voice raspy from thirst. The quiet murmurs of suspicion soon grew into loud, angry accusations shouted across the dying riverbed. The invisible line of respect that had separated them for generations was erased, replaced by a chasm of fear and blame. The hunters, driven by instinct and desperation, decided they had to take what they needed to survive. The farmers, fiercely protective of their last resources, resolved to defend their land and their families. One evening, as the sun set like a blood orange wound in the dusty sky, a group of hunters armed with spears and stone axes crossed the dry riverbed. They were not coming to trade. They were coming to take. The farmers, seeing them approach, grabbed their hoes, sickles, and the heavy digging sticks. Fear had given way to a grim determination. The clash was brutal and clumsy. These were not soldiers. They were hungry, desperate people. The sharp crack of a spear shaft breaking, the dull thud of a stone meeting bone, the pained cries of men who had shared bread just months before. This was the sound of the world's first war. It was not a war for glory or territory, but for a handful of grain, for a mouthful of water. It was a war born from the deepest, most primal fear, the fear of extinction. They fought until exhaustion and the encroaching darkness forced them apart. They retreated to their respective homes, tending to their wounded, their hearts heavy with a new kind of sorrow. They had not only fought each other, they had fought against their own shared history. The peace was broken, perhaps forever. In the chaotic aftermath, as the smoke from hastily built defensive fires curled into the night sky, a figure emerged from the farmer's settlement. It was an old woman named Suri. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, each line telling a story of seasons past, of births and deaths, of feasts and famines. Her steps were slow but deliberate as she walked to the center of the camp, to the communal fire where the elders were debating their next move. The men were agitated, their voices loud with tale of revenge and fortification. But when Suri stood before the flickering flames, a silence fell over them. She was not a warrior or a chief, but she held an authority that came from having seen more moons than anyone else. She let the silence hang in the air for a moment, then she spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of ages. "I have seen many things," she began, her eyes scanning the faces around the fire. "I remember when the hunters and our people hunted together, before we learned to tame the grain. We were one tribe, tracking the great beasts across the plains." She paused, letting the memory sink in. "We chased the same animals, we drank from the same streams, we feared the same predators. Now, look at us. We are fighting for the very things that once united us. We fight for water. We fight for food. We are fighting for life itself. We are still chasing the same thing, but now, we have made each other the predator." Her words were simple, yet they cut through the anger and the fear like a sharp blade. She pointed a frail, steady hand towards the hunters' caves across the valley. "They are hungry, just as we are. Their children are crying, just as ours are. Their fear is our fear. By fighting them, we are fighting a reflection of ourselves." Suri then made a proposal that seemed, at first, unthinkable. "We must not build higher walls," she sighed. "We must break them down. I will go to them. I will not carry a weapon, but a promise, a pact." The council was stunned. "Go to the enemy, unarmed." It sounded like suicide, but Suri's conviction was unshakable. She proposed a new way of living, born from this new, harsh reality. "Let us share what little water we have. Let us combine our knowledge, their skill in reading the land and our skill in nurturing it. We will dig new wells together. We will find new, drought-resistant plants together. We will not be hunters and farmers anymore. We will be survivors." And so, the next morning, as the pale sun rose, Suri walked across the scarred earth of the dry riverbed. She carried no more weapon, only a small, empty water gourd as a symbol of their shared plight. The hunters saw her coming and raised their spears, suspicious. But as the lone, elderly woman approached without fear, their aggression faltered. She spoke to them with the same wisdom and the clarity she had shown her own people. She offered not a truce, but a merger, an alliance. She proposed that they abandon their separate caves and the huts and build a new, single settlement together, near the most promising well, a place where everyone would share the work, and everyone would share the rewards. It was a radical idea. It meant letting go of old identities, of the pride of the hunter and the pride of the farmer. But in their exhausted, starving state, the idea of community, of shared burden, was a powerful lure. For the first time, these two distinct tribes saw a future that wasn't about fighting over scraps, but about building something new together. They agreed. From that moment on, a great change began. Humans stopped living in isolated caves and scattered huts. They started to settle. They built their new village, a collection of sturdy mud brick homes encircling the shared well. The hunters taught the farmers how to read animal tracks, helping them protect the new settlement from predators. The farmers taught the hunters the patience of planting, the rhythm of the seasons. The great, solitary hunts of old became a memory, a story told to children around the communal fire. The age of caves, an era defined by small, wandering groups, quietly came to a close. A new chapter in the human story had begun, the age of villages. The last cave on the hillside was not a tomb marking the end of humanity. It was a cradle. It was the place where humans, pushed to the brink of annihilation, finally learned the most important survival skill of all, not how to conquer nature, not how to conquer each other, but how to live together. It was the birthplace of community, the dawn of civilization. Andy, that, right sir, is the foundation of the world we all share today. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more tales about our incredible shared past. See you next time.